since the 90s, it has been a rite of passage for ABC shows to go to the Disney parks. I watched every single episode and I thought it would be really fun to talk about them with you. Originally, I was just going to review each one and then I was going to rank them. But the more I thought about it, the more that I thought it would be fun to award them. I will be giving every Sitcom Disney Parks episode a beautiful trophy for a win in a category that I feel best describes them. I will be handing out the awards here, but then I'll be talking a little bit about each episode from the parks themselves. Only in Walt Disney World, because I am not going all the way to California. But without further ado, I present to you the Disney Parks Sitcom Award Show. Most Fantastical, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Season 2, Episode 23.
Sabrina the Teenage Witch was a really special episode because it was the only one to feature Animal Kingdom, and it was actually filmed before the park opened and aired only 2 days after it opened. They spend a lot of time over in the Dig area, Disney Point, where they find a caveman. Another thing about Sabrina is that they're walking in literally every area. Like over here, they would be trampling through this, which is definitely not allowed. One thing I will say about the Sabrina episode is that the effects did not age well. I mean, I'm sure if you're familiar with the show, you remember Salem, the talking cat. He does come with them to Disney and has his own little adventure. He doesn't necessarily look the best, and I'd say that goes for all of the effects. Something really interesting about this episode is that they do take a boat ride, and if you frequently go to Animal Kingdom, you're probably like, I've never seen a boat. And the reason for that is, like I said, they filmed before the park opened, so they had a sneak preview of the Discovery River boats. These boats only lasted a year and like 4 or 5 months, not even making it to 2 years. A lot of guests were expecting it to be an attraction, a ride, but it ended up being more like a means of transportation, and that's why it closed early. But we still have the docks. And maybe someday they'll bring it back, but I wouldn't count on it. One of the more interesting lines that is said in this episode is by Sabrina's friend, and she says, "Let's head over to Africa. I hear you can get a picture with a real-life poacher." I did look it up. There was a poacher character type person that used to appear on the ride. I don't know if you could get a picture with him, but it's kind of weird that they wanted to. Another thing is, they stayed at Coronado Springs, which was a brand new resort that kind of opened with Animal Kingdom, so that was a really cool feature.
The award for Most Wholesome goes to Full House! Season 6, Episodes 23 and 24.
Full House was the first ABC episode to film at a Disney park. It did a big scene right here towards the beginning-ish of their Disney adventures when there's a giant genie float and Michelle gets to rub the lamp and become princess for the day, which I totally wish was real. I would love to be princess for the day. It sounds amazing, and since I was a little kid, that's been something I've wanted to do, but sadly it's not real. I think that the Full House episode really features the parks well. They do cover a lot of ground in the Magic Kingdom especially, and they do film over at the Grand Floridian, which is really cool. But Joey goes off on his own little adventure to Hollywood Studios, over where they used to have the working animation studio, which is especially cool to see. And Mark Henn, an animator you might know for creating Ariel in the original Little Mermaid, was the animator that Joey interacts with, so that's a cool little Easter egg. I really like the meta-ness of the Full House episode because they do feature Aladdin, and then they have Steve show up dressed as Aladdin at one point, and that's super cool because if you know Scott Weinger, he's Aladdin. I'll put captions for that. Don't want to say it too loud. That's just a really cool fan thing to know. I think the Full House episode has the highest stakes of every episode because Michelle gets lost. And that's a very real concern when you come to a Disney park.
Most Chaotic goes lovingly to Boy Meets World. Season 3, Episode 21.
Something that really sticks out to me when it comes to the Boy Meets World episode is the fact that it is so chaotic and so unrealistic. The way that they bounce between Epcot and Magic Kingdom, there's no way anybody could humanly do that. There are a lot of great funny things in this, like the B-plot with Eric and his dummy of Corey that he's trying to pass off as the real Corey. And I also enjoy the funny montage of Corey. Special award for Best Mullet goes to Mr. Turner with business in the front, party in the back. And another special award goes to Stacy, who actually appears in this Boy Meets World episode as well as in Step by Step. So she gets 2 Disney episodes. I think they might have filmed at the same time. They were kind of released around the same time, which makes me think she was here and able to go between both filming. Something I noticed when watching this after watching Full House is that I think they have the same table in the Coral Reef restaurant that Vicky and Danny had in the Full House episode. So that's a fun little hidden thing I came up with.
Most unexpected goes to Step by Step, Season 5, episodes 22 and 23.
Step by Step is actually a lot of fun. I've never seen Step by Step. I don't know the dynamics of the family really or anything like that, and I still really enjoyed this episode. The doing everything storyline with Flash is A++++++. I especially love the Rocky montage at the end, and also the lab coats in the Disney control room, which definitely is not a real thing, at least I don't think so. The Indiana Jones scene in this episode copied what Full House did, but did it better. I also really enjoyed the JT Disney storyline. I think it is so funny and silly and goofy. I don't want to say too much, you have to see it for yourself. But I will say that when JT Disney is walking around, he says, I love my park. That's one of my favorite parts. It's interesting seeing them stay at Old Key West because I feel like, as a big Disney fan who's been to the parks a lot of times, I don't really even know what Old Key West looks like or where it is. So seeing it featured here was an interesting touch. In the scene where they're over by Pirates of the Caribbean, there's a torrential downpour coming. Everything's fine. Pay no attention to the dark clouds behind me. During the Pirates of the Caribbean scene, right before the JT Disney plot starts, there's this little girl who's very clearly trying to get in the shot. I don't know if she's like a regular park goer or an extra, but I still think it's funny. The only thing that I will say about this episode that maybe I don't like is I could have done without the singing plot, because honestly, even telling you now, I barely remember what happened with that. So we should have focused more time on Flash doing everything around the resort.
Most funny goes to the middle, Season 5, episodes 23 and 24.
So like Full House, the middle is a two-part episode, and perhaps my favorite thing, all of it is hilarious, but my favorite thing is when they arrive at the gates and they have to scan their Magic Band ticket to get in. This was at the start of Magic Bands too, so it was like a big deal. They realize that their tickets are for Disneyland, not Disney World. And that is honestly the funniest part. They start saying that they can just make the beep noise so their Magic Bands will scan. It's a whole thing. It's so funny. They go through a lot of mishaps and misadventures, which is definitely my favorite part of the episode. The family kind of fights here and there, which is funny for us to watch, but also very relatable. I mean, everybody gets a little exhausted, a little hangry at a Disney park. Has a giant thick binder filled with her plan to keep them on schedule in the Magic Kingdom, which I think is so funny because that is me. Rick, who is really into fonts the whole series, has a lot of fun getting a classic Mickey ear hat with a font on the back. It takes him a while to decide. It's so funny. Something that you hear a lot if you go to Disney parks often like I do is, well, don't you want to go other places and see the world? And I think this episode captures that you can see the world at Epcot. Frankie and Mike decide that they're going to have their Paris experience that they've always wanted by having a beautiful dinner by themselves in Paris at Epcot. And I think that just really sums up what I would say to people when they say, don't you want to see the world? I can. I also love that they get to stay at the Grand Floridian and they appreciate it. Like Full House is at the Floridian, they don't even acknowledge it, they're just, of course they're there. But the middle, the whole family's like, this is incredible! They freak out over the toilet paper, over the phones, over everything, and that's how it feels. That's how it felt when I went to the Floridian. I was just fully amazed. I think this episode really captures like the funniness of the chaos that can be your Disney experience.
The award for most nostalgic goes to The Wonder Years, Season 2, Episode 10.
This is not exclusive to this specific episode of The Wonder Years, but I really like Don Cheadle's narration. I think he has such a great voice, and of course I'm a fan of him as War Machine in the MCU, so it's cool to see somebody I know included in a show that I really haven't seen. The character of Dean is super relatable with how badly he wants to go to Disneyland. I root for him the whole episode. He just wants to get there. He doesn't want to stop at a college and tour. He doesn't want to make any sort of stops. He just wants to get there and be at Disneyland. Disneyland, and that is so me. One thing that I will say about this episode is that I wish there was more time spent in the parks. A lot of it is their journey to the park, but they do end up showing a little bit of the park, so it's not a total loss. I also really love the acknowledgement of World of Disney, the TV show that Walt used to do. I wish that I had been alive back then to see it. Actually, what I do wish is that they would put it on Disney Plus for us to watch now. I would love that.
Most fancy goes to Blackish. Season 3, Episode 1.
In this episode, the Johnsons are VIPs, and honestly, I'm jealous. They have their very own guide, aka a plaid, and just a big shout out to all the plaids of the world. They work hard, they're the best. My favorite part of the episode, what always sticks out to me, is when they're walking as VIPs, and Diane's like, don't even look at me. The fanciness, the way that they walk, that's how I feel when I get a good lightning lane. Once again in this episode, as is pretty common in these, is that geography does not exist. I have it written here that Rainbow went from Magic Kingdom to Animal Kingdom, then said she wanted to go back to the hotel, but ended up in Epcot and Rhode Soarin', but then exit out of it in Magic Kingdom. Did you follow that? Because I didn't. There's a really funny line, I think Diane's, maybe it was Jack, I'm not sure, but they said, it's so funny, they said, most people die climbing Mount Everest. We are going to die waiting for it. And honestly, on a day like today, when it is spring break and it is busy, that is 100% true. This episode actually has a few similarities to the Modern Family episode, which makes sense because they aired around the same time, maybe a year or two apart, I'm not sure. But both feature a turkey leg, and both feature the Minnie Mouse slippers. Rainbow ends up wearing them just like Gloria did in Modern Family. Big shout out to this episode for featuring the parks really well, although they didn't go to Hollywood Studios. And I'm like, how did you go to every other park and not Hollywood Studios? I would have loved to see that featured as well, because that would have been just a knockout of the park, showing all 4, unheard of.
Most creative goes to George Lopez, Season 3, Episode 24.
My favorite thing about the George Lopez episode is the contest integration. Of course, if you watch it now, you can't enter, but it's still fun to play along. There are Mickeys hidden throughout the episode. There are so many. I couldn't count them all. I would love to go back and try, but I feel like there are just so many. They're so well hidden. It's really fun. I really like that they got a souvenir picture because that is so nostalgic. You don't often see that anymore. It is such a nice moment when George's mom surprises him with the classic Mickey embroidered ears. And then later in the episode when George has all of the Disney merch and he's totally decked out head to toe, that is so me, and I love that. I do wish that more time was spent over at DCA or Disney's California Adventure, because they do spend a lot more time in Disneyland and like very briefly show DCA. So I think they could have played around more with going to both parks.
Most disappointing, the Goldbergs. Season 7, Episode 1.
The Goldbergs only get to Disneyland within the last 5 minutes of the episode, which is such a shame because it could have been really cool. There were a lot of opportunities and sadly they didn't take advantage of any of them, and I'm not really sure why, but there you have it.
Similarly, most useless, the Golden Girls. Season 4, Episode 16.
Golden Girls is really easy to talk about because they literally didn't even go to the parks. The whole time they talk about Space Mountain, and the only thing we see is like a stock photo of Space Mountain, and then being like, ah!
Most unhinged, Blossom. Season 3, Episode 19.
Blossom is really cool because it takes place in Disneyland when most of the 90s episodes take place at Walt Disney World. It was the first Disney sitcom episode, not Full House, but Blossom. The difference is that Full House kicked off the ABC sitcom episodes. This one was over, I believe, on Fox. It was the only one of the 90s not on ABC. What I really like about this one is that they show a lot of rides. That's pretty unusual for these episodes. I don't want to give anybody around here any ideas. Luckily, it's pretty spacious here. But I question them showing the characters throwing ice off the skyway onto guests below. Seems like an odd choice. Not sure how that got past Disney's, protocols. I like to call that TikTok behavior before there was TikTok. Also, Elvis is a big part of this in the parks. Has Elvis ever been in the parks? That's news to me.
This one I definitely didn't want to talk about while actually in the parks. They have a very interesting kissing montage, or a makeout session montage, which in itself is really interesting for a Disney park centered episode. Not that there's anything wrong with kissing. But it's just the fact that they included Belle, a performer as Belle, kissing like a guest. Like, he was also a performer, he was playing Elvis, but the fact that they were in this makeout montage was certainly an interesting choice for character integrity, which that truly is unhinged. That is some unhinged behavior. Also in the episode, they called out the 7 dwarves having velour heads. It's just very surprising that Disney would okay these things or let them include them, or like, I'm so surprised that this made it to the airing. Also, Elvis in the parks? Has Elvis ever actually been in the parks? We need Disney Dan to investigate this. Most transformative. Family Matters. Season 6, episodes 22 and 23.
Something that I love about this episode is all of the physical comedy, especially with Steve Urkel when he arrives and falls and just all of those funny little physical moments. I think that the Wilderness Lodge Hotel is featured super well, and I've stayed there, so it's cool to see somewhere I've stayed being featured. I absolutely love when the magic hits Carl as soon as he enters Magic Kingdom. He feels it, he's like, this is great, which leads to a great montage that's super fun. In the montage, he meets characters, and just really makes me smile and warms my heart. I have to say that the Interventions nostalgia really hits home for me. It's heavily featured because Steve Urkel has this like science-y sort of competition thing that takes place over there. That whole part is a little bit weird, but also kind of fun. And there's a really fun Kiss the Girl cover. I'm not really sure who sings it, but I thought it was pretty epic and I want it on my playlist.
Most realistic. Modern Family. Season 3, episode 22.
Modern Family wins in a really big way because a lot of the time, the majority of the episodes are actually spent in the parks, which you'd be surprised to hear doesn't happen often. The wind is a little bit intense. One of my favorite parts is that Gloria wears these heels, these really high heels, and thinks that she can power through the park. And I've been there, I've gotten new shoes and been like, I can get through the park. So by the end of the day, your feet hurt so bad. So I think her getting the really fluffy mini slippers is so relatable and so funny. I love the excitement of Luke being tall enough to go on a ride, because that is such a real experience that everybody that comes to a park when they're little goes through. There's this really funny line that Phil Dunphy has. This is gonna be awesome! And they get in line for a ride and then he's like, in 45 minutes, this is gonna be awesome! Another relatable moment. And piggybacking off of that, Ty Burrell is just such a genius for his physical comedy, and I think this episode really showcases that well, so that's just a bonus. Shout out to Jay for saying that Tomorrowland is across the park, because so often in these episodes, characters are hopping from ride to ride in a way that makes no sense, and not even ride to ride, but park to park. It's not possible to do what they do. So Jay keeping it real, saying that's all the way across. I love that. One thing I question is the character integrity of this, which I will talk about at home.
I don't really want to talk about things related to character integrity while in the parks, because I believe it's important to preserve that for people around you. There was definitely some questionable character integrity in this episode with Dylan playing Little John. I know that Modern Family isn't a show for kids or people that would believe in the characters, but still, I find it to be an odd choice for a Disney show to outright show that someone is in a costume. Also, Little John doesn't really roam a lot. Maybe he did at the time of this episode airing, but when is the last time you saw Little John just roaming around Fantasyland at Disneyland? Most up to date. Home Economics. Season 3, episode 1.
I love in this episode when they hear that they're going to Disney, the kids start jumping up and down, and then the adult, Tom, also jumps up and down. He's so excited. That makes me really happy. Marina is one of the characters in the show. She's making agendas for everybody, which is something I've done and continue to do. And I love that she mentions the Disneyland app.
All personnel adjust comms.
I also think it's really fun that hidden Mickeys are mentioned in this episode. And I did immediately notice that Gretchen was wearing a lounge. Not this one, a different one. This is a little complicated, but they do go to Avengers Campus, and there's a meta Spider-Man joke because Tom / Topher Grace, the actor, was Venom, and he says he's not really a fan of Spider-Man. I love that Galaxy's Edge is featured. I'm in Galaxy's Edge right now in a different park, currently getting rained on, but that's okay. And the lightsaber battle with the reveal is a plus. I also like that they feature the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, which came to life when I was too old to do it, and that still devastates me to this day. And this episode definitely has the best snack showcase of any of the sitcom episodes. What the heck? Why is it just floating in the air? What is that? Okay. I love the great montage of two grown men having fun at Disneyland together.
Oh, we just ate it.
This is the only episode to feature DCA, finally. I also like that they say, I've got a bad feeling about this. I've got a bad feeling about the rain.
So those are the Disney sitcom episodes and what I thought about them. I would love to hear in the comments what you think about these episodes. And if you haven't seen any of them, definitely check them out. It's really fun to watch and see how the parks have changed over the years. That's my favorite part. I would love to maybe talk about these again, maybe get more in depth, maybe talk to some of the people that worked on them. I feel like that would be a really cool series. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely let me know in the comments. And I love you all. Stay beautiful, you people.